It's a very interesting case for many reasons, but it really reminds me of Kyle Rittenhouse, which is starting on Monday, and obviously Derek Chauvin and George Floyd, in that the jurors have seen the most important evidence in the case. We have video evidence. You can really kind of set aside a lot of the witness testimony and everything, because that is the best evidence. And not only do you have video evidence in this case, Anjanette, everyone has seen it. The entire country has seen the footage that Roddy Bryant took of the McMichaels killing Ahmaud Arbery. So if you're the prosecution and the defense here, you're really trying to get into these jurors' minds, because you're not starting at sort of step one here. You're essentially well into your case because everyone's seen the video. You want to get into their head and say, hey, what do you think about this video? Do you think that Ahmaud Arbery acted appropriately? What about the McMichaels? What do you feel about, Georgia Stand Your Ground law, even though it's been repealed, the citizen's arrest law? All the types of evidence and facts that are going to come in, because the jurors already are going to have preconceived notions in a very highly publicized case like this that was captured on video.
So, Neama, what did you make of all of this? The judge is clearly frustrated, and I am assuming that presiding over a trial with a defendant like Markeith Loyd would be frustrating. He speaks his mind, and he kind of wants to drive the bus. So do you think that anything the juror said was improper? The fact that they were even discussing any of this?
Well, they shouldn't talk about the substance of the case, but they can certainly talk about their frustration. No one wants to be a juror, especially in a case like this where you're sequestered, and really the defense isn't a particularly good one, an insanity-type defense with a very difficult defendant who's prone to outbursts. Ultimately, I think the judge needs to control her resting face and not reveal how she feels, her frustrations, because clearly the jurors are picking up on that, and that's not what you want to portray. If you're a judge, you need to be fair, you need to be impartial, you need to be the umpire there. And if the jurors believe that she's frustrated with the defendant, again, that's a problem. Even though the case is a problem and this defendant is a problem, you need to kind of control your emotions a little if you're the judge here.
I thought it was interesting that he was concerned. He said that some of this questioning is beginning to sound like cross-examination. So, Neama, what is your take on that?
It's a very interesting case for many reasons, but it really reminds me of Kyle Rittenhouse, which is starting on Monday, and obviously Derek Chauvin and George Floyd, in that the jurors have seen the most important evidence in the case. We have video evidence. You can really kind of set aside a lot of the witness testimony and everything, because that is the best evidence. And not only do you have video evidence in this case, Anjanette, everyone has seen it. The entire country has seen the footage that Roddy Bryant took of the McMichaels killing Ahmaud Arbery. So if you're the prosecution and the defense here, you're really trying to get into these jurors' minds, because you're not starting at sort of step one here. You're essentially well into your case because everyone's seen the video. You want to get into their head and say, hey, what do you think about this video? Do you think that Ahmaud Arbery acted appropriately? What about the McMichaels? What do you feel about Georgia Stand Your Ground law, even though it's been repealed, the citizen's arrest law? All the types of evidence and facts that are going to come in, because the jurors already are going to have preconceived notions in a very highly publicized case like this that was captured on video.
This is with her making this mistake in her report.
Anjanette, very frustrating as a prosecutor. You have a slam dunk case with a guy who has killed 2 people, police officer, his pregnant ex-girlfriend, and you have your witnesses doing this. I don't think it's going to be fatal, but this is just my own personal frustration when law enforcement witnesses do this type of thing. Your job as a prosecutor is to disclose everything. You don't hold anything back. You give everything to the defense. That is their absolute right. So don't give the defense ammunition by making these types of mistakes, because it can sidetrack an otherwise very strong case.
So, Neama, I'm looking at this and I'm kind of like, oh, she did get upset. I'm assuming she wouldn't have gotten that upset in front of the jury. She knows the jury's not there to see this, but maybe the jury would have been okay with it. I don't know. What do you make of her reaction to the defense attorney's questioning?
Yeah, I agree with Ole. I don't think the result is going to change at all. Such a strong case, but maybe because her name was Karen. I mean, she really was a very poor witness. And, this is the last thing you want to do if you're a government witness, a state witness. You want to maintain your composure. and all of a sudden when you're cross-examined, you're reacting in a very defensive, kind of hostile manner. If you're the state, I mean, they also obviously made some mistakes. You got to get out ahead of this. You want to do this in your direct. You want to own the mistake if you're the witness. Obviously, that wasn't done here. And frankly, this is clearly a law enforcement witness that is not used to being challenged or cross-examined or second-guessed because he came across as a very poor. I'm just glad that this didn't happen in front of the jury.
Just knowing what we know right now, and knowing the fact that, we've got this armorer, it's her second job, from what we understand. And she, there were some issues with her apparently on her first job as an armorer. And she's saying there's no live rounds on set. Then this Dave Halls guy, the assistant director, gets the gun, hands it to Alec Baldwin. He says he should have checked it and can't remember if she spun the drum in the revolver to see if it was loaded. Based on that, and that was all according to their statements in a search warrant affidavit, do you see criminal charges coming out of this for either Halls or Gutierrez-Reed?
And Jeanette, I do. I think this is a criminal case, and I expect both Halls and Gutierrez-Reed to be charged. And this is why. Obviously, look, a lot of this is civil negligence. We can kind of go through it. I do not expect Baldwin to be charged. He will be sued civilly. In addition, there will be a workers' compensation claim. But let's just go through all the problematic steps here and what rises to the level of criminal negligence or gross negligence. First, you have live ammo on set. That should never happen. Anywhere from 1 round that killed Hutchins to 500 rounds or something in between. I mean, the sheriff didn't tell us, but there's a significant number of live rounds on set. This particular gun reportedly discharged the Saturday before 2 or 3 times. Again, wasn't removed from the set. All that's negligence. Yeah, you have staff members engaging in target practice during break with live rounds. Negligent. Yeah, Baldwin himself pointing a gun, even if you believe it's a cold gun, it's loaded with lights. You don't point a gun at another person. You just don't do that. But really, you nailed it, Engineer. Halls and Gutierrez-Reed, what they did, what they didn't do, their job was to check that prop gun. They did not. They told Baldwin, they told law enforcement that they checked it. Not only did it have that 1 live round, it had 3 additional other rounds that may have been live or not. So that's the basis for the manslaughter charge.
I'm sure scarred and going to be scarred. She'll never be able to get that out of her mind, those images. Neama, how do you think this plays into the whole insanity defense thing? Because, when you're insane, when you're legally insane, you don't know the difference between right and wrong. Do you stand there and keep shooting if you know the difference between right and wrong?
Well, if you're a cold-blooded killer who just killed his ex-girlfriend who was pregnant and you're on the run, then yeah, this is par for the course. And what's really sort of outrageous, I mean, it's incredibly sad testimony, is before Loyd went down this insanity route, he was going to present a self-defense argument. Like he was defending himself against this police officer. So just really sad testimony. I don't know what you do with this case if you're a defense attorney, because whether it's self-defense, whether it's insanity, it's just not going to fly. And this jury is going to be incredibly upset and frankly appalled. And we know that because we got that little preview today from those 4 jurors who are already discussing the case.
What does he have to gain by even bringing up that she may have said in the past that she thought they were talking about someone stealing?
Yeah, this is just a desperation play. The defense attorney has to do something, ask some sort of question. But, to quote the late, great John Wooden, don't mistake activity for achievement. Sometimes attorneys get up there, they feel like they have to ask a couple questions. The last thing you want to do is a question, that, especially on cross, that it's going to get an answer that is going to be a no. You got to ask those leading questions, get yes, 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 yes. And obviously the defense attorney was unable to do so in this case. And it's one of those slow guilty pleas that we always talk about. It's just marching towards the inevitable here. Guilty verdict.
You mentioned she has a different interest in this case than the defendants do. So, what do you think of her thoughts and her feelings on this and wanting, a specific type of juror? Because she seems to have faith that they're going to be able to seat a jury that will convict the 3 men.
Yes, and Jeanette and Ole and I are in 100% agreement on this one. We're on the same page. So let's talk about the type of juror that you want. And it's interesting. Normally, defense attorneys want to change a venue. They want to move out. But in this case, the McMichaels and Roddy Bryan love that conservative jury pool there in Glenn County. So what kind of juror would I want as a prosecutor in this case? And it's really kind of opposite world, because normally if you're a prosecutor, you want older, male, white. I mean, obviously you can't choose based on race, but conservative jurors, that's not what you want in this case. You want liberal jurors that are sensitive to issues of systemic racism, law enforcement misconduct. Let's not forget that, Gregory McMichael was former law enforcement. So you want those liberal, more woke jurors in this case. That's not what you typically want if you're prosecuting a case. And so far, from some of the questioning, individual and group questioning, it seems like this panel is a lot better than what I anticipated. You have a lot of folks that are questioning why 3 armed men, or at least 2 armed men, are chasing down an unarmed black man. You have folks that are identifying with Black Lives Matter. You have folks that question why real law enforcement weren't called, and they're taking these matters into their own hands. So I like the prospective juror responses so far a lot better than I anticipated in that conservative county. A very mixed state. We saw this during the last presidential election, right? It's purple, and we're getting a little bit into politics here, but obviously metropolitan areas of Georgia, near Atlanta, that's going to be a very, very different jury pool than there are in rural parts of Georgia. So, if you're the defense here, you really want to stay in one of those red rural parts of Georgia, you're going to be better off from a defense perspective than you would be. Now, I understand things are changing there in Glynn County, but it's, again, a lot better in that particular county than you would be in Atlanta and the surrounding urban counties in Georgia.